السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جميل. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمسينا وأمسى الملك لله والحمد لله لا شريك له لا إله إلا هو وإليه المصير. أمسينا على فطرة الإسلام وكلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. اللهم ما أمسى بنا من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر. ونصلي ونسلم على حبيبنا ومولانا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ما بعد, very nice to be here on this blessed night in this blessed community, and as if subhanAllah, I was just here yesterday, and it shows you how the time just runs, how the time just goes. This got a little bit more white, and subhanAllah, that's how the world works. And actually that's one of the things, that's what we wanted to talk about in one sense, this concept of time and actually the end of times, and some of the signs that are related to that, like Sheikh Abu Khair, he mentioned, I was giving the khutbah on that yesterday. Yesterday was, as you know, 12/21/12, and there was a big hype in the media about it and all of this because of supposedly this was supposed to be the end of the world according to the ancient Mayan calendar and all of this. And these type of propaganda and this type of hype happens every so often. Every once in a while somebody says something's going to happen, and people make a big stir and this and that, and then life goes back to normal. But it's important for us as Muslims to have a good understanding of what the reality is of the Day of Judgment, of when it is coming, and some of the things in particular that Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said about the end of times. Because actually there are some very, very interesting things, and that's what I want to talk about today, inshallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Al-A'raf, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك عن الساعة أيان مرساها قل إنما علمها عند ربي لا يجليها لوقتها إلا هو ثقلت في السماوات والأرض لا تأتيكم إلا بغتة يسألونك كأنك حفي عنها قل إنما علمها عند الله ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. And this ayah is really such an important ayah because it makes this concept very clear, that they ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people of Mecca in his time, about as-sa'ah, about the hour. The word as-sa'ah in the Arabic language, for those of you know, today in this day and age it means a period of time, 60 minutes, 1/24th of the day. Right? But in the original Arabic language it actually means a moment in time. It doesn't mean a specific amount of time as it does today, because there was no clocks and there was no, it wasn't exact as it is as we have it now. It means a moment of time. And it's called the hour because the hour can come anytime. That moment can come anytime. That moment of time when the day of judgment will come, it can come at any time. And there are hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says that, that time will come, لا تأتيكم إلا بغتة, that it won't come to you just except like very suddenly. Somebody will be in their home going about their business. Somebody will be eating some food, and that food won't even get into their mouth. And these different types of descriptions. When it does come, it will come suddenly. But before it comes, there are certain things that have to happen. And inshallah, like I said, that's what we're going to talk about. And so they ask you about as-sa'ah, about the hour. When is it going to come? Ayyana mursaha. This word mursaha is very interesting. It comes from al-mursat. Al-mursat is anybody knows? Anchor in the ship. When you want to stop the ship, you throw down the anchor and the ship comes and then it stops. So a beautiful, subhanAllah, word, because as if time is going and then this is just the end point, right? So they ask you, when is the end of time coming? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, He says, say, verily the knowledge of this day, the end of time, is inda Rabbi. It's with my Lord. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His knowledge. Nobody else. The knowledge of when time will end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He didn't tell it to anybody. You have, like we said, different people come along and different characters, different, these fortune tellers and false prophets and all of these characters that come and say these kind of things. But the reality is nobody. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the greatest man who ever walked this earth, the man who was given the last and final book, the true message of Allah, the only book that is protected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't know. Nobody knows except Allah Azza wa Jalla. عَالِمُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يُظْهِرُ عَلَى غَيْبِهِ أَحَدًا إِلَّا مَنِ ارْتَضَى مِنْ رَسُولٍ. That He is the one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the Alim al-Ghayb. He's the only one that knows the unseen. And He doesn't give anybody access to that unseen except somebody that He wants to from among His messengers. Right? And this, but in this particular matter, the exact information is not given to Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لا يجليها لوقتها إلا هو, and this time will not be revealed, will not be given except by Him, except by Allah. And this is heavy on the heavens and the earth, and until the end of the ayah. And the fact is that most people do not know. Most people do not realize, and most people don't even pay attention. Most people don't even pay attention to these issues that are connected to the afterlife. Although, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, and He tells us that people know about the affairs of this dunya. They know the stock market and the interest rate, and if you ask people today, what is this? What is the Dow Jones look like, and what is the price of this product, and how much does it cost if I'm going to buy this car? They know all of these surface type affairs. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. They know these surface matters connected to this world, but when it comes to the akhirah, hum ghafilun. The people are heedless. They don't know. So that's from that standpoint we wanted to talk about this subject, inshallah. Before I started, I just want to say a couple things about the community. It's nice to see that, mashallah, the community, there's a movement, as like in Arabic they say, fil haraka baraka. When you do things in that, there's barakah, and encourage the community to keep doing, to keep moving, to continue to hold things consistently, and to continue to work in the community. I noticed one, subhanAllah, interesting similarity between the community in Garden Grove and the community here. Over here, you live in a primarily Armenian district, right? The vast majority of the people around are of Armenian descent. In Garden Grove, we have also a majority there, the Vietnamese population. It's very interesting. So, and we're like a little minority there, the same as you here. But subhanAllah, you build bridges, you participate on the city council and the city affairs. You let people see the good face of Muslims, and not the bad face, not that we double park, and not that we cause congestion, and not that we make noise, and not that we make mess, but you let them see the good side, and believe me, it has an effect. Because we have, subhanAllah, in our community, people that have slowly come into Islam, people that are interested and curious, and we have a very good relationship with the community around. And that comes by keeping these good relations. So inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this community have a good relationship with its surrounding community, inshallah. So some of the signs of the Day of Judgment. The signs of the Day of Judgment, the ulama, they broke them into a couple of different ways of categorizing them. Number one, the minor signs of the Day of Judgment and the major signs of the Day of Judgment. The minor signs of the Day of Judgment, some of them have already taken place. The major signs of the Day of Judgment have not yet come to pass. And those major signs of the Day of Judgment include the coming of Dajjal, the Antichrist, the coming of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, Christ himself, the what else is there? The dukhan, the smoke that will come, the Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, and the nar that will come from Yemen, and these different things, right? Though none of those things have happened yet. When that comes, when one of those things happens, then the rest will come in immediate succession, and that will signal, that will be the very end of times. But until any of those things happen, we cannot say that, we are at the very, very last days. So we have clear proof, and those things will happen. We will all know about it. They won't be hidden things. The big signs, alamat al-kubra, they will be things that is apparent for everybody. But like we said, there are also the minor signs. And the minor signs, they also further divided them into those things that already came to pass, those things that already happened, in other words, those things that, secondly, that have already taken place and are continuing to happen. And thirdly, those things that will happen in the future. And thirdly, those things that will happen that have not yet come to pass. And so today I want to talk about some of the things that have already taken place and that we see happening in front of our own eyes. Because subhanAllah, what do we learn from this? We learn actually a lot of things from this. One of the things is that the truthfulness of the messengership of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That risalatu Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kanat haqqa. There's no doubt about it. I mean, everything that we know about Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam lets us know from every single angle in terms of what he said, what he did, what he foretold, what is going to happen in the future, things he told us that happened in the past, the truth that is in this book, everything. We know that Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ is the last and final messenger, and we see those evidences all over the place. And this is just one of those particular things. So that's one of the beautiful things that looking about, and these things are very, very interesting. People like to talk about these things because they're interesting, and they are. And that's fine. But there's also certain things that require amal, that require work. We learn about these things, and there's some things that need some action items to come out of them too. So the first sign, and subhanAllah, and when you read in the books, they mention like over 100 different minor signs that are there mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dozens and dozens and dozens of them, and many of them have already taken place. So the first thing that has already taken place is the coming of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. He said, "Bu'ithtu was-sa'a kahatayn." He said, myself, I have been sent, I have been brought into this world, and the last day, they are like these two fingers. Meaning what? Meaning that it's here, that the Prophet ﷺ, he is the last prophet, sent in a long line of prophets who came over the course of thousands and thousands of years. We don't know how long. And this period in time, if you compare it to the whole of human history and the whole of creation, then we are in that last speck of time. If you have a timeline like this is the beginning and this is the end, we're over here, right? We're at the very end. So that's for sure, that we are in the end of times in that sense. Also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ السَّاعَةِ أَيَّانَ مُرْسَاهَا فِيمَ أَنْتَ مِنْ ذِكْرَهَا. That they ask you about the coming of the Day of Judgment. فِيمَ أَنْتَ مِنْ ذِكْرَهَا. That from you are which of those, you are of the signs of the day. So this is the first thing. The coming of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in and of itself, the sign that end of times is near. And then we see some interesting things that took place in the past. One of those things, as the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, that's related by Auf ibn Malik, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أعدد ستا بين يدي الساعة وذكر منها فتح بيت المقدس. That 6 things, he said, that are signs of the Day of Judgment that must come to pass before the Day of Judgment will happen. And he says from among those things is the opening of Bayt al-Maqdis, al-Masjid al-Aqsa. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, obviously Jerusalem was in the hands of the Christians, of the Byzantines. And the Muslims were a very weak group in Mecca and not even able to go out, worship in public, not able to do much of anything. And the Prophet ﷺ, in many different prophecies, he told them about, one day that the empire of the Romans will be in your hand, the empire of the Persians, and he says that Jerusalem will come into the hands of the Muslims, which is a very far off thing for people in that situation. But he says that will happen, and of course it happened in the time of who? Before that, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, right? Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. Not too many years after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Jerusalem and Baytul Maqdis, it comes in the hands of the Muslims, and they are actually given the key, right, to the city by the chief chief priest of the city. And we know of the story of Sayyidina Umar, how humble he was when he took that. And then at one point in time it was lost from the Muslims, and of course it was recovered again in the time of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, many years later, in the year 583 Hijri. Right? And up until today, alhamdulillah, still in the hands of the Muslims, although the Zionists are trying everything in their power to extract it from their hands. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect this house of his. Say Ameen. So that's one historical fact the Prophet ﷺ he told about that is going to be towards the end of times, and all of these things will be. He also told us something very interesting. This hadith is very interesting, subhanAllah. And this hadith is related in Bukhari and Muslim, and related by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تقوم الساعة حتى تقاتل الترك صغار الأعين حمر الوجوه ذرف الأنوف كأن وجوههم المجان المطرقة لا تقوم الساعة حتى تقاتلوا قوما نعالهم الشعر. SubhanAllah, this hadith is very interesting. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that the day of judgment will not come until you will battle the Turk. Again, and to understand the depth of this hadith, you have to understand the situation of the Prophet ﷺ when he's relating this hadith. He's relating this hadith. The Muslims don't own anything. They don't have an empire. They don't have they don't have land. They don't have possession over anything. So for him to even be talking about these matters in and of itself is, subhanAllah, something interesting. Not only that, then very specific in terms of what is going to happen. He says that the day of judgment will not come to pass until you go to battle with the Turk. And he gives a description of them to let us know exactly who they are. He says that they will have small eyes. They will be red-faced. They will be, their noses will be kind of depressed, and it will be flat. They, as if their faces are al-mijan al-mitraqa, like shields, kind of round. And this is a very precise description of the features of the people who actually came and entered the Muslim empire, the Mughals, the people from Mongolia, China, that part of the world, led by, of course, Genghis Khan. And this took place in the 6th century Hijri, the year 656. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells about this 650 years before it happens, and they made the biggest impact on the land of the Muslims at that time, more so than anybody else did before. And the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us it's perhaps, Allah Ta'ala A'lam, perhaps the Prophet ﷺ never even saw anybody of this facial feature, but yet he describes it to a T, exactly how they look. And subhanAllah, and how can that be except if this news is coming to our beloved Prophet ﷺ from Allah Azza wa Jalla. And he says that the hour will not come until you will fight people that their shoes are made from like the hair of animals, and this is what they used to wear. So very, very precise description of one of the events that will come in the future. Those are some of the things that have come to pass. Some of the things that we see in front of our own eyes today. And like I said, there are dozens and dozens of things. Just focus on a few. This is very interesting, this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It says, لَيُوشَكَنَّ أَنْ يَسُبَّ عَلَيْكُمُ الشَّرُّ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْفَيَافِي. He said that it is almost, there is about to come a time when a shar, evil, will descend upon you from the sky until it will reach al-fayafi. We'll mention what that is in a second. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that evil is going to come from the sky. What does that mean? In the Quran, we read Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, ظَهَرَ الْفَسَادُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِي النَّاسِ. That fasad, corruption, is going to spread on the land, it's going to spread in the sea by the hands of men, what they did. And subhanAllah, corruption on earth we understand, but we didn't really understand what does it mean, corruption, or that the earth will be spoiled and messed up on the ocean, in the seas, until recently. And until you look at all of the disastrous oil spills and how different sections of of the oceans are being contaminated, polluted, overfished, and so on and so on. So you see that ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر. You see that has come to pass. But the Prophet ﷺ, now he's talking about also from the sky as well, right? In this hadith. And we look what's taking place in today, and some of these hadith are open to interpretation. Some of these hadith are open to interpretation. They can be understood different ways, and that's fine. But if you look at today's context and what's happened in the last, 20, 30, 40 years, the innovation of satellites and the fact that today there are some 15,000 satellite TV channels in the world. 15,000. And hundreds of satellites in the orbit of the sky going around the earth and transmitting these channels onto earth, right? You have to admit, you have to be honest, what is the content of most of these channels? What do they carry? Most of what they carry, and if you really look at it, and for those, many people in this room are from the different Arab countries. If you turn on the cable or the satellite TV in Egypt and probably other places too, every other channel, almost every other channel is this, wallahi, is garbage. Music videos and in America we have maybe like 1 or 2 channels. We know them because from when we were young, MTV, and I don't know what it's called, VHS or whatever. There's like 2 or 3 video channels, music video. In Egypt, when I was there is like ridiculous amount of like 20 of them. All they do, play all day long, and so that evil being transmitted shed down to the sky. Right? And subhanAllah, we see from that that the Prophet ﷺ definitely was Sadiq al-Masduq. He is the one who told the truth. And he says in the end of that hadith that until we will reach al-fayafi. And they ask the Prophet ﷺ, وَمَا الْفَيَافِي? What does that mean? That word we don't know. He says, الْأَرْضُ الْقُفْرِ or الْقُفْرِ or الْقَفْرِ. الْقَفْرِ. الْأَرْضُ الْقَفْرِ.
Absolute desert.
The empty land, right? The desert that's totally empty. And you see, what do you see today? You see some places, the Bedouins, they put their tents out in the open land. And what do you see next to it? The satellite dish. In the middle of nowhere, they still put it. So even that evil is coming even into those far off, far reaches, those far lands. And subhanAllah, look at this amazing prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also talked about in the end of times how killing will become so commonplace. Murder and killing, but a certain type. And he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the hadith that's related by Imam Muslim, والذي نفسي بيده لا تذهب الدنيا حتى يأتي يوم لا يدري القاتل فيما قتل ولا المقتول فيما قتل. And subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I swear by the one that my soul is in his hands, I swear by Allah, that the dunya will not leave, in other words, the last day will not come, until a day comes when the qatil, when the killer, the murderer, he does not know why he's killing. And the person who's being killed, he doesn't know why he's being killed. A day will come. And in the old days, there used to be wars, there used to fight, because there was something that set that off. This guy killed my brother, so I'm going after him. This tribe, they took some of our land, or they killed somebody, so this tribe takes revenge. There's a cause and there's effect. But then there came a time in history, and if you look in the last century, and the huge wars that were there, people forgot why they even were going to war. If you look at, and look at the numbers, look at World War I, some 15 million people died in that war. This is about almost 100 years ago now. What happened in World War I and then again in World War II? The whole world is almost at war. People have their allies, and those allies, they fight side by side against... They don't even know what the original cause of the war is, but they're fighting. Why? Because they feel they have some allegiance to these other people. In World War II, 55 million people died. For what? There was definitely some results that took place and some changes in the way the world was divided after that time. But if you really look at it, what happened? Vietnam. I bet if I ask you any of you today, you cannot tell me why the Vietnam War took place. 3 million people killed in that war. The Russian Civil War, 10 million people. In the Spanish Civil War, 12 million people. The Iraq and Iran War, 1 million people. Look what's taking place in Iraq today. Look what's taking place in Afghanistan today. Why are people being killed? In Pakistan and in Afghanistan today, America sends its drones, and those drones, which are remote controlled, they go and they drop bombs, and many times those bombs hit who? Innocent children, innocent civilians. What are they being killed for? What's the purpose? What is the purpose of them being there anymore? Anyways, in these countries, look what happened on a smaller level. Look what happened last week in Connecticut. How many people were killed? I think it's 25, 26, 27 people. 20 of them children, kindergarten children, and as young as our young lady over here. For what? Because some guy went mad, and he has no idea why he went around killing. And you see what happened in Columbine and these mass killings that are taking place in America. People are killing and they don't even know why. If you were to ask them, I don't know. Somebody did something wrong to me when I was a kid. My mother mistreated me. I had mental illness. But what? So what? What did this guy have to do anything with? So the mass killing is becoming commonplace. The killer has no idea why he's killing, and the one who's being killed has no idea why he's a victim. So again, the Prophet ﷺ telling us years and years and years ago about things that will take place hundreds of years later. We also read the Prophet ﷺ, and this is very interesting, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about so many different realms, so many different things in life that we see in front of us today. He talks about the concept of one aspect of urbanization. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, the long hadith, this is called Hadith Jibreel. When Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, he comes to the Prophet ﷺ in the form of a man, and he asks him different questions. The Sahaba are there sitting with him, and he asks them what is Islam and what is Iman and what is Ihsan. And then Sayyidina Jibreel asks Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ, he says, أخبرني عن الساعة, tell me about the hour, the day of judgment. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم من السائل. He says the one that's being asked has no more knowledge than the one who's asking. I don't know any more than you know. But then he tells him, he asks him another question. He says, وأخبرني عن أماراتها, but tell me about some of its signs. And the Prophet ﷺ answers and tells him some of the signs. One of those signs, he says in that hadith, Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ, he says, وَأَن تَرَى الْحُفَاةَ الْعُرَاةَ رُعَاةِ الشَّاءِ يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. Yes, subhanAllah. Most of the Arabs, you are familiar with this concept, and that you will see, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, you will see the naked, barefooted herders of sheep, right, competing in building buildings. And what does that mean? If you think about the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what does that mean? People lived the most simple existence, small cities, they build 1-story, maximum 2-story, maybe maximum 3-story house. He's saying there will come a time when the Bedouins, who are the most primitive people on the face of the earth, there will come a time, and they herd animals. They have no place in society. They're just most simple people. One day will come when those same people will be building the world's largest buildings. And you look at what you see in front of your eyes today, subhanAllah. Those of you who have been to Dubai, those of you now even been to Mecca, those of you been to all of these different, in the Khalij, in the Gulf, what are they doing? يَتَطَاوَلُونَ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. They're competing with each other to build the largest building. I don't even know what it is. Now every year it's changing, right? In Dubai they have, I don't know what they have.
150 story.
150 story.
And the building rotate.
Yes,
every day take you from the east. You have your apartment in the east. Tomorrow you'll find it in the west. I'm not kidding. I've been in this place.
Yeah.
And take you from the west to the north. 365 days, 365 degrees. 150. One building in Dubai.
Wow. And how much of it is vacant?
Move.
How much of it is in use? What is the purpose of it? Nothing but just for the point of proving that they could do it.
Show it off.
To show that they could do it.
Show it.
So they're building the building not for use, but for competition, as the Prophet ﷺ stated. And these are the last people that would ever be expected that would do that. And there's an interesting hadith even about Mecca and what's happening in Mecca today. We see it. We'll come to it, inshallah. So this is, subhanAllah. And this competition is most seen in the Middle East. In the Middle East, not anywhere else. There was a time when Sears Tower, and then was the one in Malaysia, but now all of the back and forth competition taking place in the Middle East. One year somebody builds it this high, and the next year somebody else builds it that high. Another interesting hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that's also related in Sahih Muslim, لا تدخلون الجنة حتى تؤمنوا. Actually, sorry. The concept of giving salam, of spreading salam, and the importance of it in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us in the hadith, that the famous hadith that we're all very familiar with, لا تدخلون الجنة حتى تؤمنوا ولا تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا أولا أدلكم على شيء إذا فعلتموه تحاببتم أفشوا السلام بينكم. The Prophet ﷺ says that you will not go to Jannah until you believe, and you won't believe until you love each other. And should I not indicate something that if you do it, then you will love each other? أفشوا السلام بينكم. Spread peace between you, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he gives the order that just generally gives salam to everybody. على من عرفت ومن لم تعرف. To those that you know and those you don't know. The spreading of salam for everybody. It's not particular. But what does the Prophet ﷺ say in the other hadith? إِنَّ مِنْ أَشْرَاطِ السَّاعَةِ From among the signs of the Day of Judgment, أَنْ يَمُرَّ الرَّجُلُ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ لَا يُصَلِّي فِيهِ رَكْعَتَيْنِ وَأَلَّا يُسَلِّمَ الرَّجُلُ إِلَّا عَلَى مَنْ يَعْرِفُ. SubhanAllah. The Prophet ﷺ says that a person will pass by in the masjid, he won't pray 2 rak'ahs, pray tahiyatul masjid, and he will not give salam upon the person that he doesn't know. Right? So, assalamu alaikum just became a greeting. This guy is a good actor, by the way. MashaAllah, he's a really good actor. If you didn't see his play in the mass convention, MashaAllah, you need to see it. And I said salam to him when he came in. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that, to say salam alaikum is something that is for everybody, not a specialty. We don't have this concept of cliques and small groups. And when I go to the masjid, I'm only going there to see my friend ABC. And I forget about everybody else. And you already know these guys. You see them every single time. Go say salam to somebody else. But he says from among the signs of the Day of Judgment that there will come a time when you won't say salam except to those people that you know. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who spread the salam everywhere. Also from amongst the signs the Prophet ﷺ talked about, this hadith is narrated by Imam Ahmad, hadith sahih, لا تقوم الساعة حتى تظهر الفتن ويكثر الكذب وتتقارب الأسواق. It's an interesting hadith. He says that the hour will not come until the fitan, the different trials, calamities, afflictions will become apparent in the world, and lies and corruption will spread. And interestingly enough, in the end he says وَتَتَقَارَبْ الْأَسْوَاقِ, that the marketplaces will come close to each other. And what does that mean, the marketplaces will come close to each other?
Mall.
The mall. SubhanAllah. I mean, where there was a time and place when if you want to get certain products, if you want to get apples or fruits or this and that, you have to go to that guy who sells them. Maybe it's some distance. But now, everything is in one place, the mall or the shopping market or this and that. That's one understanding of how the taqarrub al-aswaq, that how it comes together now. Another understanding of it is that even more so, that what used to take place a long time to get to now because of modern day transportation and so forth, you can get there like so fast and get what you need. Another even more, modern understanding of that, you want something from the other side of the world, you want to buy something in India or China or anywhere in the world, what do you have to do? Or you go on the internet, you want to buy something, you press the button, and the next day that will be delivered to your doorstep. Is there any more, further clear proof of what that means than that? SubhanAllah, that the marketplaces will come close to each other. Where things used to take so much time, now look how we live, look at our lifestyle. And the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about that way back then. How can anybody visualize that, imagine that, come up with that as a concept? Nobody can. That's because this is from what some of the ghaib that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows him to see. Also we have ended 7:30?
Yes.
Inshallah. Also the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in the end of times, and this is very relevant to us as people living in California specifically, he says in the hadith that's related in the Musnad al-Imam Ahmad also, أمتي أمة مرحومة لا عذاب عليها في الآخرة جعل الله عذابها في الدنيا القتل والزلازل والفتن. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, my ummah is a ummah that will be shown mercy. There will be no punishment for it in the next life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made his punishment in this dunya. How? By al-qatl, by killing, and earthquakes and other calamities and so on and so forth. And then that point is further emphasized in another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by Bukhari. لا تقوم الساعة حتى يقبض العلم وتكثر الزلازل. SubhanAllah. He says that the day of judgment will not come until ilm is withheld. It's not spread as it once was. And earthquakes will become abundant. Earthquakes will become abundant. Allah Ta'ala A'lam knows how it was in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and in the centuries before, but definitely we know this has become a reality of life. In many parts of the world, that earthquakes are now commonplace and they take place in great abundance. قد صدق الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم in regards to this, in regards to so many other things. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he also talked about, and this is, there are kids in the room? No. A couple of guys, so we'll skip this one. The Prophet ﷺ, he talked about, this is interesting, subhanAllah. Hadith muttafaq alayh, خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. We all know this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that the best of my ummah is this generation, the generation of the Sahaba, and then the ones that come after them, then the ones that come after them. The three first generations. Sahaba wa tabi'un wa atba' tabi'in. We all heard this hadith many times. Interesting in this hadith, then he says, he gives a further description. Who comes after them? He says, ثُمَّ, but we never hear this part of the hadith. ثُمَّ إِنَّ بَعْدَهُمْ قَوْمًا. He says, then there will come people after them. And he gives different descriptions. One of the descriptions, وَيَظْهَرُ فِيهِمْ السَّمْ. And it will, and then there will come people after them that there will become people who are obese, big, large people. And that's what we see today. This generation specifically is when this became a worldwide epidemic. I remember reading an episode, what do you call it? One of the magazine, National Geographic, one of the, how do you call it? One of the issues, maybe a couple of years ago, and it had an interesting article on obesity in the world. And it gave a map and it showed which countries where there was the most obesity and all of this. And subhanAllah, Muslim countries, some of them are at the top. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, some of the other Gulf countries and other places. So that the Prophet ﷺ, when they live in a time, and the Prophet ﷺ used to be very hard on people who had bellies, that were out of shape. He was not, that was not something that he let go easy. Because they were people who were active, they were people who moved, they were people who didn't live lives of luxury, so they didn't get to this point. But now we have a more docile lifestyle. We have a more, we don't walk, we don't move, and this, what the Prophet ﷺ said many centuries, we see today the reality of it. And if you look on the, one of the big pushes in the whole healthcare industry for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the dialogue has been around this exact subject, obesity. I used to work in a school district, and this is one of their big things they wanted to target, because kids nowadays, from a very young age, eating a lot of junk food, a lot of fast food, and this is a reality. And the Prophet ﷺ, he talked about this. SubhanAllah. A couple of more things briefly mentioned. The Prophet ﷺ, he talked about Mecca and how it would develop. And we see that happening in front of our eyes today. We read in a long hadith where it's mentioned that Sayyidina Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar, he said, and he wouldn't say this, and this is what you call hadith marfu' hukman, that he's relating this information. He wouldn't relate this information except from the Prophet ﷺ because it has something to do with the al-ghayb. And he says, كيف أنتم إذا هدمتم البيت فلم تدعوا حجرا على حجر قالوا ونحن على الإسلام قال وأنتم على الإسلام. This is an interesting hadith. He says, how will you be when you destroy or when you take down the house, and I don't know how to properly translate this. I'm going to read the end of it because that's what concerns us. And then he says, قال ثم ماذا? He's saying after this one stage, he says, ثم يبنى أحسن ما كان فإذا رأيت مكة قد بعجت كظائم ورأيت البناء يعلو رؤوس الجبال فاعلم أن الأمر قد أضلك. This is interesting. The words in here are a little bit strange. They give the explanation of it. He says that there will come a time when it will be built, what is around the Kaaba in Mecca. It will be built up, and you will see قَدْ بَعَجَتْ كَظَائِم. And they explain that as meaning that there will be tunnels that will be dug. There will be tunnels that will be dug in Mecca. And that's what we see today. And those projects are still going on. Number one, there's massive tunnels that are there for the pipes for Zamzam water. There's tunnels that are built into the mountains. Any of you have been to Mecca, you've seen these, for the cars to pass through. And there's more and more being built in the construction that they're all of that they're doing. And he says, وَرَأَيْتَ الْبِنَاءَ يَعْلُو رُؤُوسَ الْجِبَالِ. SubhanAllah. Mecca was not like this one generation ago, but now it is. He says that you will see the buildings passing over, being, in elevation, in height, higher than the surrounding mountains. SubhanAllah. Look at Mecca. Look at Mecca. And I don't know if any of you seen these emails that were circulating in the last few months. People are sending these emails about Mecca and the disastrous project of making these monster skyscrapers all around the Kaaba. And you've been there recently, you see this ridiculous clock tower standing in front of you. No longer does the Kaaba have the haiba that it had because of all of the distractions around you. So this hadith that Prophet ﷺ, he talked about, we see it now in front of our own eyes. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the last hadith, and this is very, very interesting. And like we said, some of these hadith are open to interpretation. But when you look at the reality that we live in today, you see the description is, subhanAllah, so precise. We read in hadith that's mentioned in Ibn Hibban عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال يكون في آخر أمتي رجال يركبون على سرج كأشباه الرحال ينزلون على أبواب المساجد نساؤهم كاسيات عاريات. SubhanAllah. He says that there will be in the end part of my ummah men, listen to this, there will be people who will be riding on, the literal translation, they will be riding on saddles or on mounts. Just put the picture in your mind. They'll be riding on saddles or on mounts. They'll be sitting on something, and they're كَأَشْبَاهِ الرِّحَالِ, that they will be like figures that will be moving, that will be on some type of moving, transporting vehicle, right? And that's exactly what we see today. What is when, Imagine the Prophet ﷺ, the way he would, if people from that time, if they were to see the way in which we move today in our cars, they just see people and just moving so fast. You can't even see it. And so the Prophet ﷺ talking about a time will come when people will move at great speeds on land and perhaps in air and so on and so forth. And the Prophet ﷺ, and you know what's interesting about this hadith? He says, يَنْزِلُونَ عَلَىٰ أَبْوَابِ الْمَسَاجِدِ, and that they will come, they will come riding on their mounts, and they will come even up to the doors of the masjid. If you look right outside the window right there, what do you see? You see the cars sitting right there, that people come, they come to the masjid and they drop you off and you come in. But subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned so many of these things that we see taking place today. And how is that possible? Of course, unless he is, and we all know he is the truthful, the one who brought us the truth in the form of his book, the one who brought us the truth in the form of his sunnah. It's upon us to realize the truth of it, and what we are held accountable is for the following of that truth that is given in our hands. فنسأل الله تعالى أن يجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.